The sun rose slowly over the sands of Giza, painting the horizon in soft gold. The Sphinx stood silent and proud, its ancient face weathered by thousands of years of wind and sun. Around its paws, workers and archaeologists moved carefully, brushing sand, carrying equipment, and measuring stone. Dr. Myra was the lead of the expedition. She was not the oldest or most experienced archaeologist in Egypt, but she had a reputation for noticing details that others overlooked. That morning, while others studied carvings and cracks, her eyes fell on a patch of sand at the base of the monument. The ground seemed uneven, almost hollow beneath the weight of the dune. She called over 2 workers with shovels and asked them to clear the spot. The men worked carefully, their movements slow and precise, until the sound of metal striking stone echoed faintly from below. Excitement stirred in the air. They brushed the sand away, revealing the edge of a large slab. Unlike the limestone blocks of the Sphinx, this slab was darker, smoother, and fitted too perfectly to be a natural part of the monument's foundation. Myra bent down and touched it. The stone was cool, far cooler than the hot desert air. She pressed her hand along its edges and found a thin gap, just wide enough for a finger to slide through. She looked back at her team, her eyes shining with curiosity. "This is not just a foundation block," she said. "This is a door." The workers exchanged nervous glances. Stories of hidden chambers and cursed tombs were common around Giza, and many had grown up hearing warnings never to disturb what lay beneath the Sphinx. But Myra was not the kind to walk away from mystery. She instructed the team to bring lifting tools. For hours they worked under the blazing sun. The slab was heavy, far heavier than anyone expected. It took ropes, levers, and the combined strength of many hands before the stone began to shift. At last, with a grinding sound, it tilted open, revealing a darkness below that swallowed the sunlight whole. A cold wind rose from the opening. It was not the smell of dust or decay but something dry and clean, almost like air preserved in a sealed jar for ages untold. The workers stepped back, murmuring in low voices. Myra held her lantern high and leaned closer. A staircase descended into the ground. The steps were cut from the same dark stone as the slab, smooth and unbroken, leading down in a spiral that disappeared into blackness. The walls carried faint carvings that none of them had seen before. They were not the familiar hieroglyphs of Egypt. Instead, they were strange geometric shapes arranged in precise patterns, like stars connected in unfamiliar constellations. Myra's heart raced. She had studied Egypt's monuments for years, yet nothing she had seen prepared her for this. She knew at once that this staircase was not built by the same hands that carved the Sphinx. It was older. Perhaps far older. The team lowered more lanterns into the shaft, casting dim light across the walls. The carvings glowed faintly in response, as if the stone itself drank the firelight and gave back its own shine. The workers gasped, some crossing themselves, others whispering prayers. Myra turned to her assistant, a quiet man named Dimash, who was sketching furiously. "Record everything," she said firmly. "This is history speaking to us." Word spread quickly across the site. Soon other archaeologists gathered, their voices rising with excitement and disbelief. Some argued that it must be a natural fault in the stone, others that it was a forgotten chamber built by priests. But none could explain the glow in the carvings or the flawless construction of the stairs. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, Myra stood before the opening with her lantern in hand. She felt the weight of choice pressing upon her. If she descended now, she might uncover a secret hidden for thousands of years. Yet she also knew that the unknown could bring danger. Many ancient tombs were filled with traps or sealed with deadly air. She looked back at the Sphinx, its silent face watching over the desert. For centuries, people had wondered if something lay beneath it. Perhaps today, she would be the one to answer. "Prepare the equipment," Myra said at last. "We go down tomorrow at first light." The workers nodded, some with eagerness, others with fear. They set up lights and ropes around the opening, sealing it with wooden barriers for the night. Myra remained near the Sphinx long after the others left, staring at the dark entrance. The cool air continued to drift upward, brushing against her skin like a whisper from the past. She closed her eyes and imagined the builders who had placed the slab. Who were they? Why had they hidden a staircase beneath the most famous monument on Earth? And what secret waited in the shadows below? The desert grew quiet as evening came. The stars slowly appeared above, glittering in the deep sky. Myra lifted her eyes to them, remembering the strange patterns carved into the walls. They looked like constellations, but not the ones she knew. Perhaps they were maps, pointing to places far from Earth. Her thoughts burned with questions. Were these carvings messages from an ancient people, or from something even greater? And if the staircase had been sealed so carefully, was it meant to be protected, or was it meant to protect the world above from what lay beneath? Myra pulled her coat tighter against the cooling desert air. She knew that once she stepped onto those stairs, her life would change forever. The discovery was too great, the mystery too deep. Tomorrow, the world would know that the Sphinx guarded not only the desert's history but something beyond imagination. As the last lanterns flickered against the sand, Myra whispered to herself, "We are not only walking into history. We may be walking into something older than history itself." The staircase waited, silent and patient, as it had for countless ages. The next morning came with the first touch of sunlight over the desert. The Sphinx stood tall against the brightening sky, its shadow stretching long across the sand. Around its base, Myra's team prepared for the descent. Lanterns, ropes, breathing masks, and water flasks were laid out neatly. The workers spoke in hushed voices, their eyes often turning toward the dark opening at the foot of the monument. Myra stood at the edge of the staircase, her hand resting lightly on the cool stone. She felt a strange calmness, as if the air itself was waiting for her. Her assistant Tomasz tightened the straps on his pack and looked at her with quiet determination. "Are you ready?" he asked. Myra nodded. "We go together. No one goes alone." The team of 6 gathered close, each holding a lantern. With one last glance at the golden desert above, they stepped down into the shadows. The staircase was narrow, carved with precision. The air grew cooler as they descended, wrapping them in a stillness that felt untouched for centuries. Their footsteps echoed softly, the sound swallowed by the spiral that turned endlessly downward. The carvings on the walls glowed faintly, their shapes clearer in the lantern light. Circles within circles, lines crossing at sharp angles, and symbols that resembled stars spread across the stone like a silent map. Myra paused often to trace them with her fingers, noting how the patterns seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. Tomasz sketched quickly in his notebook. "These are not Egyptian. They are something else entirely. They look almost like instructions." Myra agreed but said nothing. Her mind raced with possibilities. As they went deeper, the staircase began to widen. The stone steps became smoother, as if shaped by tools more advanced than chisels. At times the walls pulsed faintly with light, responding to their movement. One of the younger archaeologists, Lena, gasped when her lantern dimmed and the walls themselves glowed brighter, lighting the path without flame. "It is like the stone is alive," she whispered. The others murmured in awe. Myra raised her lantern higher. "Keep going. We must see where it leads." After what felt like hours, the spiral ended in a vast landing. Before them stretched a great corridor, its ceiling high and arched, supported by massive pillars. The floor was smooth, free of dust, as though time had never touched it. The air was dry but carried a faint hum, like the low sound of distant wind though no breeze could be felt. They walked slowly into the corridor. The lanterns were no longer needed, for the walls glowed steadily, their light soft and steady like moonlight. The carvings here were more complex, forming long sequences that resembled both language and mathematics. Myra's eyes widened as she realized that some of the symbols repeated in patterns, almost like equations. "This is knowledge," she said softly. "Not decoration. Whoever built this wanted to be understood." Their footsteps carried them farther until the corridor opened into a wide chamber. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. The room was circular, with a high dome above. From the dome, faint lines of light streamed down like threads, connecting to the floor in gentle arcs. In the center stood a pedestal of black stone, smooth as glass, its surface untouched by dust. The team gathered around it in silence. No one spoke, for the sight was overwhelming. The chamber felt alive, as if it were breathing with them. Myra approached the pedestal carefully. She reached out but hesitated before touching it. She looked back at the team. "If this is a tomb, it holds no body. If this is a vault, it was meant to last forever. Should we open it?" Lena asked nervously. "It is already open," Myra said. Her fingers brushed the surface of the pedestal. At once, light rippled across it like water disturbed by a stone. The dome above shimmered, and images appeared across the walls. The chamber came alive. Stars filled the air, projected in glowing patterns. Constellations twisted and shifted, showing skies unlike Earth's. Strange worlds appeared, spheres of green, blue, and silver. Beings that were not human moved across the images, tall and slender with shapes too graceful to be statues. The explorers stood frozen, unable to breathe. "They were here," Tomasz whispered. "They came long before us." The images shifted again. They showed early humans gathered around fire, looking upward at the night sky. The taller beings stood among them, not as rulers but as watchers. Then came images of great monuments rising from the sands, hands of humans building stone upon stone while the taller beings stood apart, guiding but never interfering. Myra's voice trembled as she spoke. "They saw us. They knew us when we were still learning to survive. And they left this behind for us to find." The chamber grew quiet as the images faded. Only the faint hum remained. The pedestal returned to stillness, as if it had given all it wished to show for now. The team exchanged looks of wonder and fear. Some whispered prayers again. Tomasz closed his notebook slowly, his hand shaking. Myra took a deep breath. "This changes everything. History is not only ours. We were part of something larger all along." Before they could speak further, the floor trembled faintly. The walls glowed brighter, then dimmed again. From the far end of the chamber, a second passage opened silently, stone sliding aside as if obeying an unseen command. A deeper darkness waited within. The team stared in silence. Lena spoke first, her voice small. "It is inviting us in." Myra felt her pulse quicken. The descent had brought them here, to the first of many secrets. She looked at the dark passage ahead and knew they could not turn back now. "We continue," she said firmly. "But we do so carefully. Whatever lies ahead has waited thousands of years. We must be ready." With lanterns in hand and hearts filled with awe, the team stepped toward the opening. The hidden world beneath the Sphinx was only beginning to reveal itself, and they were the first to walk its path since the dawn of history. The descent was no longer only a journey into the earth. It was a journey into the very heart of humanity's forgotten past. The passage beyond the circular chamber was narrow at first, its walls smooth and dark, almost polished like glass. The explorers moved slowly, their lanterns casting trembling lights across the stone. Yet soon, the walls themselves began to glow again, soft and steady, guiding them forward without the need for fire. The air grew cooler, but the faint hum they had heard earlier returned, now stronger, like the heartbeat of something vast and hidden. Myra walked at the front, her eyes sharp, her hand brushing lightly against the glowing walls. She could feel a strange vibration beneath her palm, as if the stone was not dead but alive with energy. Her steps were steady, though her mind was full of questions. Who had built this? Why had it been sealed beneath the Sphinx for so long? And what awaited them deeper within? The corridor stretched on until it widened into another great space. The moment they stepped inside, the explorers froze in awe. It was a hall unlike any they had ever seen. Vast pillars rose from the floor to the ceiling, but they were not carved from simple stone. At first glance they seemed like ordinary columns, rough and ancient. Yet as Myra approached one, its surface shifted. The outer layer of stone peeled away in slow ripples, revealing a smooth metallic surface beneath. It gleamed faintly in the glow of the walls, as if it had waited centuries to be uncovered. The team gasped. Tomasz reached out a hesitant hand, but Myra stopped him. Wait. Look. The pillar moved on its own. Symbols lit up along its length, spreading upward like streams of fire. They were the same strange geometric designs they had seen before, but here they were sharper, brighter, more alive. Then the other pillars across the hall responded, their stone skins melting into the same smooth metal, their symbols blazing with light. The chamber came alive around them. The explorers stood in the center of the hall, their shadows stretching long across the glowing floor. Lena whispered, her voice trembling with wonder. This is not stone. This is a machine. Myra nodded slowly. Her heart pounded, but her mind was steady. Not just a machine. This is something greater. This entire hall is alive. As if hearing her words, the pillars shifted again. Lines of light connected them to each other, forming a web across the ceiling. The hum grew louder, filling the chamber with a rhythm that seemed to echo inside their very bones. The floor beneath them began to change. Patterns emerged, glowing circles spreading outward from the center like ripples in water. The explorers instinctively stepped back, gathering together as the lines moved toward the far end of the hall. There, in the shadows, shapes began to stir. At first they looked like statues, tall and silent, standing in alcoves between the pillars. They were shaped like animals, their forms familiar yet otherworldly. One was the form of a jackal, sleek and tall. Another resembled a hawk with wings folded close. Yet these figures were not made of stone. Their surfaces gleamed with the same metallic glow as the pillars. The explorers watched in silent awe as the statues moved. With slow, deliberate grace, the figures stepped out of their alcoves. Their eyes glowed faintly with the same light as the symbols. They were not statues at all. They were guardians. Lena clutched her lantern tighter. Are they alive? Tomasz shook his head, his voice low. Not alive as we know it. They are something else. The guardians stood tall and still, their eyes fixed on the humans. None raised a weapon, none attacked. Instead, one of them, the jackal figure, lowered itself slightly, its head tilting as though studying them. The hawk guardian spread its wings just enough for the metallic feathers to glimmer in the glow. Myra's instincts told her they were not enemies, but she could not be certain. She stepped forward cautiously, her hands open at her sides. The guardians followed her with unblinking eyes, but they did not move. This is a test, Myra whispered. They are watching how we respond. Tomasz frowned. A test for what? To see if we are ready, Myra answered softly. The guardians began to move at last. The jackal figure stepped forward, its heavy metallic feet making no sound on the glowing floor. It stopped just a few paces from Myra. Slowly, it lifted one arm and extended a hand with sharp, jointed fingers. The gesture was not threatening. It was offering. Myra hesitated, then placed her palm against the guardian's hand. At once, light flared across the chamber. The symbols on the walls, the pillars, even the guardians themselves, pulsed with sudden brilliance. The floor beneath them shifted again. A great circle in the center opened, revealing a second platform beneath the floor. The platform was covered in patterns of light, and as the team gathered closer, they saw it was arranged like a puzzle. Pieces of glowing stone hovered above it, waiting to be placed. The guardians stepped back and stood still, their eyes glowing. The meaning was clear. The puzzle was meant for the humans. Myra motioned for her team to gather around. Together they examined the pieces. Some were shaped like stars, others like arrows, still others like curved lines. The symbols on the pillars matched them, but not in a simple way. The puzzle required thought, patience, and cooperation. For hours they worked, moving the glowing shapes, testing combinations, failing and trying again. The guardians watched silently, never interfering. At times, the floor dimmed when a mistake was made, then glowed brighter when progress was achieved. At last, when the final piece slid into place, the puzzle shone with blinding light. The hum rose into a deep, resonant tone that filled the entire hall. The guardians lifted their heads, their eyes flaring brighter. The pillars shifted once more, and the ceiling above them opened like a flower, revealing another hidden passage that led deeper into the earth. The guardians stepped aside, their great bodies bowing slightly as though granting permission to pass. The explorers stood together, their hearts racing. They had been tested, and they had passed. Myra turned to her team, her face lit with determination. We are meant to go further. They are guiding us. Whatever lies ahead, it was waiting for us to find it. With lanterns in hand, they stepped toward the new passage, leaving the living hall behind. The guardians remained still, their glowing eyes watching in silence, as if ensuring that the humans would remember this moment. The journey had taken them from stone to metal, from silence to voices of light. Now the path led deeper, and the secrets of the Sphinx promised even greater wonders waiting in the shadows below. The new passage was narrower than the great hall behind them, yet the air inside felt charged with energy. Myra led her team carefully, her lantern held high even though the walls glowed faintly on their own. The path sloped downward, twisting like a tunnel carved not by hand but by something precise and deliberate. Every step echoed softly, as though the stone itself was listening. The explorers moved slowly, speaking in low voices, until the passage opened into another chamber. It was smaller than the living hall but more intricate. The walls here were covered with carvings, not just symbols but images. Myra stepped closer, raising her lantern to the wall. The carvings showed tall figures with elongated limbs and narrow faces. They were not human, yet there was something calm and noble about them. In the carvings, these beings stood beside early humans, guiding them toward fire, teaching them to build tools, and pointing toward the stars. These are the ones who came before, Tomasz whispered. His eyes shone with awe as he traced the images with his finger. They watched us grow. They wanted us to learn. Lena frowned. But why hide all this beneath the Sphinx? Why not tell us directly? Myra answered softly, her gaze fixed on the carvings. Perhaps they wanted us to discover it only when we were ready. Knowledge is dangerous when given too soon. At the far end of the chamber stood three large figures. At first, the team thought they were statues like the ones in the living hall. But as they approached, the figures stirred. Dust fell from their shoulders as they straightened. Their eyes glowed faintly, two with a soft blue light, one with a deep golden light. The guardians had awakened again. The explorers froze. These guardians were different. They carried long staffs shaped from the same strange metal as their bodies, and their movements were slower, heavier, as though they had been asleep far longer. They stepped forward with a sound like grinding stone, surrounding the humans without raising their weapons. The golden-eyed guardian lifted its staff and struck the floor once. The sound echoed through the chamber, and at once the walls lit up with new symbols. They moved like flowing water, forming patterns that shifted and rearranged themselves into something almost like words. The team stared in silence. None could understand the language, yet somehow the meaning touched their minds. It was not speech but a test, a challenge that reached deeper than words. The golden-eyed guardian stepped back and gestured toward the floor. A circle of light appeared at Myra's feet. Another circle appeared at Tamash's, and then at Lena's. Soon all 6 explorers stood within glowing rings. The guardians lowered their staffs, their glowing eyes fixed on the humans. Myra's heart pounded. She understood. It is asking us to prove ourselves. The floor beneath each circle began to shift. Panels opened, revealing strange devices that rose slowly from the ground. Some looked like puzzles made of shifting stones, others like mechanical locks waiting to be solved. Each explorer faced a different challenge. Myra's test was a set of interlocking rings that spun and clicked in endless motion. She quickly realized she had to align them to form a single glowing path. Her hands moved carefully, her mind sharp, every click of the rings pulling her closer to the solution. Tamash faced a different trial. Before him rose a series of rods that hummed with energy. When he touched one, the others responded, glowing or dimming in patterns. He studied the sequence with intense focus, searching for the rhythm hidden within. Lena's test was unlike the others. She was given a set of symbols that floated in the air, glowing faintly. When she reached out, they shifted and rearranged themselves. She had to match them to the carvings on the wall, finding the correct order. The chamber filled with the sound of movement and light. The explorers worked in silence, each facing their own trial. The guardians watched without moving, their eyes glowing brighter when progress was made, dimming when mistakes occurred. Hours passed, though none of them noticed. Sweat glistened on their brows, and their breaths grew heavy. Yet none gave up. Slowly, one by one, they solved their trials. Myra aligned the final ring with a click, and her circle flared with bright light. Tamash unlocked the sequence of rods, and his circle glowed as well. Lena arranged the last symbol in its place, and her test vanished in a burst of brilliance. One by one, the circles lit up until all 6 glowed together. The chamber filled with a deep resonant hum, and the walls blazed with light. The guardians lowered their staffs, their golden and blue eyes shining brighter than ever before. Then something unexpected happened. The golden-eyed guardian stepped forward and knelt on one knee before the explorers. The others followed, bowing their heads in silent recognition. The meaning was clear. The humans had passed. They had proven themselves worthy. Myra felt a swell of emotion rise in her chest. This was no ordinary discovery. This was not only about history. This was about humanity's place in something far greater. She looked at her team, their faces filled with awe, and she knew they all understood. The golden-eyed guardian rose again and turned toward the far wall. With a heavy sound, the wall split open, revealing a new path. Beyond it stretched a staircase descending even deeper into the earth. Myra tightened the straps on her pack and lifted her lantern. She looked at the guardians one last time. "Thank you," she said softly, though she did not know if they understood her words. Yet in the quiet hum of the chamber, she thought she felt an answer, not in speech but in the silence itself. The team gathered and stepped toward the new staircase. Behind them, the guardians returned to stillness, their eyes dimming once more. They had fulfilled their purpose, and their time was done. The explorers descended again, their lanterns casting light ahead. The air grew cooler, and the hum followed them, softer now but ever present. They had faced the guardians and passed their trials. What awaited them below would be even greater, for each step carried them deeper into the heart of a secret that had slept beneath the sands for thousands of years. The forgotten guardians had tested their strength and their unity. Now, the true secret of the Sphinx was waiting. The staircase seemed endless. Each step carried the explorers farther from the world above, deeper into the hidden heart of the earth. Their lanterns glowed softly, but soon even these were unnecessary. The walls themselves began to shine, not with the faint glow of the upper chambers but with a steady light like starlight captured in stone. Myra led the way, her eyes sharp with focus. Behind her, Tamash carried his notebook close to his chest, recording every detail. Lena and the others walked carefully, their footsteps slow, their faces filled with both awe and fear. The air was cooler than the desert above, yet strangely fresh, as though preserved by something beyond nature. At last, the staircase ended. Before them stretched a vast chamber unlike anything they had seen before. It was not shaped like the halls above, with pillars and stone carvings. This place was round, smooth, and enormous, as though they had stepped inside the heart of a machine. The ceiling arched high above, glowing faintly with rivers of light that pulsed slowly like flowing blood. In the center of the chamber stood a towering structure, shaped like a great crystal but made of metal and light. Its surface shifted and shimmered, showing reflections that were not reflections of the humans themselves but of stars, planets, and skies unknown. Myra stepped forward carefully. She felt her chest tighten, as if she was standing before something sacred. The others followed, their eyes wide, their voices hushed. "What is it?" Lena whispered. Myra shook her head slowly. "I think it is a record. A memory left behind." As if her words had awakened it, the crystal flared with sudden light. The chamber filled with a deep hum, and streams of brightness shot across the walls. The smooth stone became a canvas, alive with moving images. The explorers gasped. The walls showed Earth, but not the Earth they knew. It was an Earth long before cities, long before pyramids, long before even villages. Endless forests stretched across the land, seas glittered under pure skies, and animals roamed freely. Small groups of humans appeared, huddled around fires, their lives simple and fragile. Then the sky above them changed. A great vessel descended, shining with silver light. It did not land with destruction or noise. Instead, it hovered, calm and silent. Figures emerged, tall and slender, their bodies graceful, their faces unlike any human yet filled with something familiar. They moved among the humans, not as rulers but as teachers. The explorers watched in silence as the images unfolded. The beings showed humans how to shape stones into tools, how to light fires more easily, how to mark the stars above for direction. They did not give everything, only enough to help. They pointed to the heavens, and humans lifted their eyes with wonder, seeing not only the fire before them but the infinite lights above. Tamash's voice shook as he whispered, "They guided us. They saw something in us." The crystal shifted again. New images filled the walls. Humans grew stronger. Villages formed. Hands built walls and temples. The tall beings stood in the background, always watching, never interfering too much. Then one by one, they began to leave. Their great vessel rose into the skies again, vanishing among the stars. Yet before they left, they placed something behind. The walls showed the great monuments of earth stone circles, pyramids, and finally the Sphinx itself. Within these monuments they hid their knowledge, locked away not to rule humans but to wait for them. Myra's breath caught. Her eyes widened as the image of the Sphinx appeared. The very same monument under which they now stood. And beneath it, the staircase, the hall, the guardians, all hidden by design. "They built this," Myra said softly. "They built all of it. And they left it for us." The crystal flared once more, showing a final sequence of images. This time, not of the past, but of the future. It showed stars again, but arranged in maps. Lines connected them, forming routes like paths across the sky. Strange symbols glowed beside them, perhaps names of worlds. Among them was one familiar star, the sun. From it stretched a line outward, connecting Earth to countless others. The explorers stood frozen. The meaning was clear. Humanity was not alone. The visitors had seen that one day, humans would leave Earth and walk among the stars. This vault was not simply a record. It was a message. Lena's voice trembled. "It means we are part of something greater. We are meant to go beyond our world." Tamash nodded slowly, his eyes wet with emotion. We are not their servants. We are their successors. The crystal dimmed, and the chamber fell silent again. The walls returned to their faint glow, and the images faded as though they had never been. Yet the memory of them burned deeply in the minds of the explorers. Myra placed her hand against the surface of the crystal. It was warm now, pulsing faintly beneath her palm, almost like a living heart. She felt a strange connection, as if the crystal recognized her, as if it had been waiting not just for humans in general, but for this very moment. They trusted us, she said quietly. They left all this behind because they believed in what we would become. The others stood in silence, their faces filled with awe. They knew she was right. For a long time, no one moved. The weight of the revelation was too great. They were no longer simply archaeologists searching for ruins. They were witnesses to a truth that would change everything humanity thought it knew about itself. Finally, Tomasz broke the silence. The world above must know. We cannot keep this hidden. Myra turned to him. Her eyes were steady, but her voice was firm. The world is not ready. If we tell them without care, there will be fear, confusion, even anger. Knowledge must be revealed as it was given slowly, carefully, with purpose. Tomasz hesitated, then nodded. He understood. At that moment, the crystal pulsed once more. A beam of light shot upward, striking the ceiling. The chamber shook softly, and a new doorway opened in the far wall. Beyond it lay a darkness deeper than any they had yet seen. Myra lowered her hand from the crystal and looked at the path ahead. Her heart pounded, but her resolve was unshaken. They had seen the past. They had learned the truth of origins. Now they were being called to take the next step. She turned to her team. We go on. Whatever lies ahead will show us why they chose us. The explorers gathered their courage and stepped toward the new passage. The revelation of their origins had changed them forever. But the vault still held secrets, and the greatest truth of all was yet to be revealed. The doorway at the far end of the chamber yawned wide, opening into a darkness so deep that even the glowing walls did not touch it. Myra stood at the threshold, her lantern raised, though the light seemed weak against the shadow. Her team gathered close behind her, each of them silent, each of them feeling the weight of what they had seen. The record of origins had shown them who had guided humanity in the beginning. Now, Myra was certain, the next passage would show why the hidden builders had left these secrets buried. Stay close, she said firmly. Her voice was calm but steady, as though she were commanding her own fear. They stepped forward together. The air inside was heavier, filled with a faint vibration that buzzed against their skin. Their footsteps echoed strangely, not only ahead but behind, as though the darkness itself repeated their movements. For a long while, there was no sound except their breathing and the faint hum. Then, slowly, a light appeared in the distance. The explorers quickened their pace. The light grew brighter until it revealed another chamber, vast and circular like the others, but different in design. This one held no crystal and no carvings of history. Instead, the floor was marked with circles of glowing lines, forming patterns like a giant web. At the edges of the chamber stood more guardians. Unlike those before, these were taller, broader, their frames heavy and strong. Their eyes glowed red at first, but when the humans entered, the red faded into soft blue. The guardians did not advance. They stood still, staffs in hand, waiting. Myra's heart tightened. She understood. This is the trial. Her words proved true. As soon as the humans stepped fully into the chamber, the circles on the floor blazed with light. The ground trembled, and from the glowing lines rose walls of light, dividing the floor into sections. The explorers found themselves separated into different parts of the web, each with their own space. Panic struck Lena first. Myra, I'm cut off. I can't get to you. Stay calm, Myra called back. She pressed her hand against the glowing wall between them. It was not solid stone but energy, smooth and unyielding like glass. This is part of the test. We must face it. As if responding to her words, the trial began. In each section, challenges appeared. For Myra, the floor beneath her shifted into a puzzle of moving tiles, glowing symbols sliding across the ground. She had to step carefully, placing her feet in the right sequence to cross to the far side. For Tomasz, walls rose around him, closing him in a maze of shifting panels. He had to use his memory and observation to find his way, though each wrong turn brought him back to the start. Lena faced a trial of balance. A narrow path of light stretched before her, suspended above a pit of darkness. She had to walk across, her arms outstretched, the path trembling beneath her feet. Each explorer had their own trial, different in shape but equal in weight. The guardians watched silently from the edge, their glowing eyes unblinking. The hum of the chamber deepened, filling the air with a rhythm that pressed against their hearts. At first, fear threatened to overwhelm them. The puzzles were hard, the paths uncertain. More than once, Myra stumbled as the tiles shifted beneath her, and Lena nearly fell when the glowing path trembled violently. Tomasz cursed under his breath as he found himself trapped again at the start of his maze. But then Myra remembered the earlier chambers. The guardians had not sought to destroy them. They had sought to measure them. This was not about strength of body. It was about patience, unity, and perseverance. She called out across the chamber. Do not rush. Think. Trust yourselves. These trials are not here to kill us. They are here to see how we work. Her words steadied the team. Tomasz slowed down, studying the maze more carefully before moving. Lena took deep breaths, steadying her balance with each step. Myra focused her mind, reading the symbols on the tiles, noticing how they repeated in a pattern that revealed the safe path. Hours passed, though the explorers could not tell time in the glowing chamber. Sweat dampened their clothes, and their muscles ached, but one by one, they overcame their trials. Lena reached the far side of her path and touched the glowing wall. It dissolved instantly, freeing her from her section. She let out a breath of relief and smiled weakly. Tomasz found the final turn in his maze and stepped into the open, his notebook clutched tightly in his hand. He laughed softly, the sound echoing in the chamber. Myra placed her foot on the final glowing tile, and the puzzle beneath her faded into stillness. The walls around her dissolved, and she stepped free at last. As each of them succeeded, the glowing barriers between the sections vanished. The team reunited at the center of the web, their faces shining with exhaustion but also pride. The guardians moved then. Slowly, they lowered their staffs and pounded them against the floor. The sound rang like thunder, and the chamber filled with light. On the floor where the web of lines had been, a new symbol appeared. It was simple yet powerful, a human hand reaching upward toward a star. The meaning was clear. Humanity had proven itself worthy. The guardians bowed their heads in silent recognition. Then, with mechanical grace, they stepped aside. Another doorway opened, revealing yet another path forward. The explorers stood together, catching their breath. Lena wiped her brow and whispered, "I thought I would fall. But we did it. We all did it." Myra nodded, her eyes steady. That was the point. Alone, each of us struggled. But together, we all passed. The trial was not just about skill. It was about unity. Tomasz's voice was soft, filled with awe. They are not only testing us. They are preparing us. They want to see if we are ready for what comes next. The team gathered their packs and lanterns. Though their bodies were tired, their spirits burned brighter than ever. They had faced the trial of worth and succeeded. The hidden builders had measured their patience, their courage, and their unity, and they had not been found wanting. Myra looked at the new passage, her heart pounding with both fear and excitement. "We are close now," she said. Closer than ever. The truth waits just ahead. The team stepped forward once more, leaving the chamber of trials behind. The guardians returned to stillness, their glowing eyes dimming as their duty was fulfilled. The explorers walked into the darkness beyond, carrying with them the light of their victory. They had proven their worth. Now they were ready for the final revelation. The explorers walked through the new passage with hearts heavy and hopeful at the same time. The trial had tested them, and they had proven themselves worthy. Yet they knew the journey was not finished. Something still waited in the hidden depths beneath the Sphinx. Something that the builders had left for those who could endure the path. The corridor was long and narrow, with walls smooth as glass. The faint glow that had guided them before grew brighter with every step. At last, the passage widened into a final chamber, greater than all they had seen before. The room was vast, shaped like a dome that seemed to rise higher than any cathedral. The walls shimmered with constellations, stars glowing in endless patterns across the stone. At the center of the dome stood a great device, taller than any human, built of both crystal and metal. Its shape was unlike the crystal archive they had seen before. This one resembled a giant wheel, standing upright, its rim covered in glowing symbols that turned slowly in the air. The explorers froze in awe. The chamber was silent except for the soft hum of the wheel. It pulsed with light, as though alive, as though waiting. Myra stepped forward first. She felt the air vibrate with every heartbeat, as if the chamber itself was aware of their presence. Her eyes never left the glowing wheel. She sensed that this was the final heart of the vault. "This is it," she whispered. "The last secret." The others joined her at the center. Lena's voice trembled as she asked, "What is it meant to do?" Tomasz stared at the symbols. He had studied every carving and pattern along their journey, but these markings were different. They were not just records. They were instructions. His eyes widened as he realized their meaning. "It is not a monument," Tomasz said slowly. "It is a signal." Myra turned to him. "A signal? To where?" Tomasz pointed to the constellations glowing on the walls. "Look. These are not decorations. They are maps. Each star is marked, and the wheel matches them. This chamber is not only showing us the stars. It can reach them." The explorers stood in silence, the weight of his words sinking in. The builders had not only left memories of the past. They had left a way to speak across the void of space. Myra placed her hand gently on the wheel. At her touch, the symbols flared brighter, and the constellations on the walls shifted. The stars rearranged themselves, glowing paths stretching outward from Earth. The chamber filled with a deep tone, low and steady, like the sound of the universe itself breathing. The wheel turned slowly, and the symbols lit one by one. A beam of light shot upward, striking the top of the dome. From there it spread outward, forming a glowing pillar that seemed to rise into infinity. The explorers gasped. They were standing inside a beacon. Lena clutched her chest. "It is calling to them. Whoever they were, wherever they went, this will reach them." Tomasz's voice shook. "It may reach others too. Not just those who built this, but anyone out there." Myra's mind raced. The builders had trusted humanity to find this place only when they were ready. The signal was a message, not of weakness, but of readiness. Humanity was no longer a child looking at the stars. Humanity was prepared to join them. The wheel turned faster, the chamber glowing brighter until it felt as though they were standing at the center of a sun. The vibrations grew stronger, filling their bones with energy. The explorers shielded their eyes, but they did not look away. Images appeared once more, not on the crystal this time, but within the light itself. The figures of the builders returned, tall and graceful, their faces calm and filled with wisdom. They spoke no words, yet their meaning was clear, carried by thought rather than sound. The explorers understood. The builders had left Earth not because they had abandoned it, but because their role had ended. They had planted the seed of knowledge, and humanity had grown from it. Now the time had come for the next step. The signal was not only a message but an invitation. Humanity was ready to rise beyond its world. The images faded, and the light began to soften. The wheel slowed until its symbols glowed faintly once more. The constellations on the wall steadied, shining like a map waiting for a traveler. Silence returned to the chamber. The explorers stood together, their faces pale but their eyes burning with wonder. Lena was the first to speak. Her voice was filled with awe. "We sent a call into the stars. Somewhere out there, someone will hear us." Tomasz nodded, his voice quiet. "And when they do, they will know we are ready. Not children anymore, but equals." Myra looked up at the constellations. Her heart swelled with pride and fear and hope all at once. "This is not the end," she said firmly. "It is the beginning." The Sphinx was never a tomb. It was a doorway. And we have stepped through it. The team stood in silence for a long time, letting the meaning settle in their souls. They knew the world above was still blind to the truth, but soon it would awaken. Humanity's story had never been only about the past. It was always about the stars. At last, Myra lowered her gaze and turned to her team. "We must return. We must protect this place, guide others to it when the time is right. This truth belongs not to us alone, but to all." The others agreed, their faces steady with resolve. They gathered their things and began the long journey back through the passages, past the guardians who now watched in silence, past the halls where the history of humanity had been carved in light. Step by step, they climbed the secret staircase beneath the Sphinx. When they emerged at last into the desert night, the stars stretched endlessly above them. The air was cool, the sands quiet, and the Sphinx stood proud against the horizon. To the world, it was still only stone. To them, it was the greatest message ever left. The explorers looked up at the sky. They saw not just points of light, but paths, connections, possibilities. Somewhere out there, the signal they had awakened was already traveling, crossing the endless dark. Myra breathed deeply, her eyes fixed on the stars. "They will come," she whispered. "And when they do, we will be ready." The desert wind carried her words across the sands, as the Sphinx kept its silent watch. Beneath it, the beacon waited, its light sleeping for now, but prepared to shine again. Humanity's place in the stars had been written long ago. Now the journey had begun.